here is the data that we have it about from actually United States. The data here shows that this is the data from 1973 to 2014 in US. The percent of people that this is the blue one is the percent of, it's the real income per capita, which is after inflation, okay? And this one is, the brown one is basically the orange line is the percent of people that who said they are very happy. Now look at here, since 1973, the income per capita actually went up from 25,000 to over 50,000 on average, which means that on average, everyone are better off at least twice than what they used to be, okay? But here's what they say. If you look at the percentage of very happy, is actually no increase, even there is some slight decrease and decline. So, and the interesting part that you can see the gap is actually growing. So that is a clear evidence that indeed money does not bring happiness.
Excuse me, I'm also not familiar with this, with the not on this curve, because this curve does not represent inflation in happiness, but it represents inflation in money. Yes, in everywhere worldwide, what you make in 1973 or 1974, people make more than double, but the value remains the same. You got my point? So from the economy point of view, what you represent here is not actually also representative too. The blue line represents that there is very much inflation in the income, but the orange one represents actually there is no inflation in happening.
Okay.
So it is really state.
Okay, so
The one here does not represent that the people get more money. No, this represents that the people have inflation with money, because the people used to have with little money they can get a lot of things before. Now with too much money they cannot get anything.
yeah,
This blue line is not also representative.
correct, but let me answer that one. This in economics, any economists among you? No? Okay. In economics, when we say real income per capita, it means that we control for inflation. This is not nominal income per capita, which only look the inflated income, okay? But whenever we say real income per capita, it means we use a CPI and indexing, and we take away the inflation part from the income. So this is about the purchasing power. It's not about the gross income that you make. So therefore, the concern that you mentioned is very valid, but they already take care of that one. So this is a real change in terms of purchasing power. It's not the change in terms of the nominal income that we use in economics, okay? Now, this is actually not surprising. There are a lot of studies in economics that the guy who first discovered this one, he did a study in 1973, he called a paradox, and called Easterlin paradox. The last name of guy is Easterlin, is an economist. He's still alive. He did the first empirical study showing such paradox, that the income goes up, the happiness goes down, and the data I look at is since 73 after that, basically saying the story is even getting worse since then. And there are many other evidence that you can show it that. I will show it to you some evidence that I use it in. Actually, this has become a lot of advertisement. My second book that is actually just coming, the Kindle edition coming this week, and the other one's coming next year. So this is, you can see the concept that actually I work on it a lot. I work on the knowledge and the pleasure. To me, they are not distinguishable from each other, relate to each other. So in that book, basically I work on the 3 dimensions of happiness that I call the pleasure, meaning, and spirituality. And I try to see, based on science, philosophy, and personal experience, and try to basically look at 3 different models. That I call, the first one is that the hedonic pleasure. The hedonic dimension is that when you try to have the happiness through pleasure, you want to have more pleasure from eating, from playing, from watching, that we call your hedonic. you thinks that happiness is through pleasure. Now then the other individual, they try to seek pleasure or happiness through meaning. We call eudaimonic. That's come from Aristotle's, his very famous books of Nicomachean Ethics. That's the concept that he discussed there. His argument is that for human, meaning is even more important than pleasure. Then the third one I call didonic is basically a spiritual dimension that you try to seek the happiness through seeking the ultimate meaning of life and spirituality in this regard. Here's what we did. We did some empiricals, we did some studies, surveys to test these models. And here is I will share with you a few charts that shows how those three groups are compared to each other. This is the charts in terms of the increased average subjective well-being when you move from low to high level within each dimension. So in other words, if you are hedonic, and if you try to work more, make more money, have more pleasure, be more hedonist, you can change your level of satisfaction by 5%. But if you try to increase more meaning in your life, you can actually increase your well-being, subjective well-being by 17%. If you invest more in spirituality, that actually your level of satisfaction in life increase even way higher than the pleasure one. So in a sense that, here is another one, you can see that the likelihood, again, this is all based on actually randomly selected samples of survey with a certain questionnaire that to measure each dimension and analyzing them. And this is the likelihood of achieving highest happiness today. Now, if you look at here, if you are low hedonic versus high hedonic, there is virtually no difference in terms of whether you're happy or not today. But if you are low eudaimonic versus high eudaimonic, that you can see you are very more likely to be happy today if you are more eudaimonic versus high eudaimonic versus low eudaimonic. Similarly, if you are high spiritual versus the low spiritual, you are more likely to accomplish happiness today. Now, overall happiness in life, there's another question we measure, that likelihood of achieving highest happiness in life in general. So again, you can see, let's say, for your entire life, you have two options. You can just, let's say, get more money and be more hedonic, have more pleasure, have more fun. What this will make difference in your life in terms of happiness? So we'll find out virtually nothing in the long run. Those who are very much engaged in pleasure, it seems like they don't really get what they expect to get it. But let's say you invest more in meaning in your life, and in the long run, you are actually, in this case, the likelihood for you to achieve the highest happiness is 22% versus 7%. And similarly, you can see the same differences in terms of spirituality. So what is the, and we did some analysis like regression analysis here. You can see here, it's very clear that when we run regression, look at the relationship between eudaimonic, didonic, hedonic, and the happiness. We use different, for the dependent variable, we use different indicators. One of them, let's say, this is the cumulative subjective well-being score that the participant receive. You can see here it's very clear that hedonic dimension is statistically insignificant, which basically means that you cannot establish any relationship between being happy and being hedonic, means pursuing fun and pleasure in your life. When you look at the entire life experience, based on what the individual tell us. But when you look at eudaimonic and hedonic, you can see that actually is a statistically significant coefficient, and the sign is a positive and substantial. So it's very clear that in a long run, what really matters for human being is the meaning and spirituality, more than the pleasure and fun. That's the market system, capitalist system, that basically telling everyone. Now, if you really look at the students, one of the main challenges is that they always pursue the instant pleasure and they get bored to pay attention and to learn knowledge in class. So in this case, they will look at their phone, they watch the video, they think they want to have a fun. Our argument here is actually you don't get fun in the long run through what you call fun. If you really want to have a happy and fulfilled life, the data clearly indicate, there are many other studies that if you can go and look at the data, clearly indicate that you can have higher satisfaction through knowledge or through spirituality rather than through sensual pleasure or through what you call certain hedonic pleasure. Yes?
It's quite surprising because you are talking about a completely different paradigm, dimensions, hedonic, eudaimonic, and gedonic. Now, these two dimensions, the meaning and the spirituality, is virtually no difference, more or less the same sort of satisfaction as we have seen in the chart. About 2 decades ago, Professor Covey, he talked about body, mind, heart, and the soul. Now basically he's talking about these three things. When it comes to body, you're talking about hedonic,
Correct.
which is more pleasure. When it comes to the meanings, he's talking about the mind and the heart. And when it comes to spirituality, he's talking about the inner soul, right? And what he says in his 8th habit or whatever, in all of his books, he says the spirituality or the soul is a big portion when it comes to the contribution. But your results, we have seen 2 graphs. They are saying more or less eudaimonic and gedonic. They end up into more or less the same levels of satisfaction. So why there is a big difference
Between the two?
between the two,
Yeah.
meaning and spirituality?
Yeah, again, in our assessments, when we developed questionnaire, then we had 6 questions for each dimension. They want to make sure that we are not really mixing the apple and oranges. And as you know, statistically that you can use the factor analysis to see how those questions are loaded to the dimension as well. We did the factor analysis as well, and we had to switch one question because it was in the meaning dimension very much related to the spiritual dimension, the statistical result indicate. So, and after that, basically our difference is this. We put it in a sense that spirituality is also meaning, but its meaning transcends this life. That you don't really limit the meaning to this life, that you have certain concept that the life goes beyond this world, and you try to get, we call transcendental meaning in your actions, and you pursue this one as in your objective function. So, and our questions was actually designed in a way that to see whether you have such things or not in your life as an objective when you try to do some things. So again, if you're interested, we can share with you the question that we have for each dimension, but we think both the statistical analysis and the content analysis of the question clearly separate those together. Now, if you say, since both are positive, we're not surprised. If you say which one we win, because we did not make comparison here between the two, because both positive contributing, but our argument here, or our hypothesis that if you are both spiritual and also engaging in meaningful things, that you're likely to accomplish higher well-being or higher satisfaction in your life. So they are complementing each other in a sense that.
If the questions are on these lines, when they are complementing each other,
Yes.
then you will have probably the same curves. But in fact, when it comes to the inner conscious, the spirituality is completely different than when it comes to the mind and the
Good.
heart, as the poem is saying. So I was expecting gedonic is going to have a better or the massive impact when it comes to the happiness or satisfaction in humans' life. So about these 2 graphs, I was expecting gedonic is going to have a bigger portion compared to meanings and compared to hedonic one.
Very good. But guess what? In our sample, you need to look at the sample, right? In our samples were mainly young individuals, mostly students, okay? And our hypothesis is that age is one of very important indicator. Actually, the study clearly indicate, which basically means that if you are younger, you're more likely to be hedonic. And you're older, you're more likely to be gedonic. So in that case, we think that the sample had some problem, therefore that did not really reveal what is that. And now we are designing a study to do an entire population with all various groups. We're going to do in Turkey to look for various actually people with various worldview to, let's say, we go to those nightclubs and make sure we get all those really top hedonic. And we go to, let's say, whatever madrasas or other place, get this top hedonic. So, and that's how we can make sure that we get it really, exactly. But still, even that one clearly indicates that something really interesting going on in this area. Now again, so basically our argument here is that in one way we created with the nature that we're driven by pain and pleasure. If you go and read the Jeremy Bentham, he will say this. But the problem that we try to see that we think that possession, power, and position will give us pleasure. Our argument is that no, it's actually is all perception leading to pleasure. If it is a perception, if the being is perception and being is meaning, in this case, happiness is perception plus meaning. That the perception that you have, in other words, the knowledge that you have, it's not the palace, the elegant palace that you build that make you happy. It is actually the elegant worldviews, the mindset that you have it, based on your perception that make you to be happy. In the sense that when you really look at in a materialist, capitalist society, the entire emphasis on the physical world, because if you have a good, nice physical condition, you're going to be happier. But our argument is that it's all about mental and inner world, or spiritual and mental world, that if you have your inner palace to be embellished and bigger, then in this case you can actually have better world. So our argument is that being rich in knowledge is actually way better than being rich in money. And after all, money is only means for perception and meaning. So in that case, nothing is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is three enrichments in life, and our world is actually as big as our words, our knowledge, because we live in our ideas or perception based on our knowledge. Even though we live in a one physical world, we all individually build our own individual private world, which comes based on our perception, our understanding, our knowledge. So in this case, that it's important that we build our perception and increase our knowledge to have meaningful life and happy life. So our argument here, concluding statement here, that we should teach to the mind by reaching to the heart through making our subject meaningful and pleasant. So if we can show the value of the knowledge, the meaning for what they are learning, they are more likely to be interested in our subject. That's the motivation. And in this case, they are more likely to get pleasure, because we'll show you many examples from my own students. They truly appreciate if you help them to expand their understanding. They truly appreciate if you help them to gain something they believe it is meaningful, useful, beneficial for them. But they really hate some things if they think that it's not going to be helpful for them. It's not going to be useful for them. It doesn't really bring any meaning to them. So for that matter, our argument here, for the heart part, that when we're dealing with human beings, we have to always be mindful. They are not like machine. They will not be willing to learn subject if they are not convinced that this is something meaningful, useful, helpful, beneficial to them. And if they are convinced on that one, they are more likely to be more interested in that. Now the part two is the head part. The part one was about heart, and part two is the head part. Now it's again, as you mentioned, this is like a stomach. So as when we eat some things, we need to make sure that whether our stomach can digest or not. So similarly, we need to make sure that we have certain understanding of how the mind understands the subject. So we're going to talk about some learning theories, learning approaches, and comprehensions in terms of cognitive digestion. But let's do a little practice. Remember, we're talking about your favorite teacher? Now, I want you to do a similar exercise for your favorite student. Think about your favorite student and write 3 traits of that student in 3 words and find out as groups that what are really the best 3 words that describe your student, favorite students. So then it's the key question for us is that to really to know why that we have some students that we think they are really the best learner, and then we can perhaps help the others to be a good learner as well. Now, one thing that I didn't see any one of you mention. Did anyone mention curiosity? Okay. You mentioned curiosity? Okay. So the curiosity is one of very important things for students to really to have desire for learning. The repetition is in terms of practices. That's when you try to really practice to learn something. The other one is free from fear of failure or confidence. That's also very, very important as well. Now, the interesting part is that actually learning begins with attention and ends with retention. So which basically means that you need to first attract the attention of students. A good student is a student that who pay attention to what you tell them, and also the students have to get this knowledge to actually keep it for long term. We call retention. So again, the true learning begin with attention and end with retention. But that basically means that it's very important that when it comes to human being, the information alone doesn't get to the mind and heart of students. Student has to get excited about the subjects, and in this case, that information plus emotion, that's basically motivation and attention come with the emotional side, that's basically help to accomplish the long-term retention. There are a lot of studies clearly indicating that basically what the knowledge that is going to the long-term memory is the knowledge that you're excited more about. It's actually, there are certain events when it happened, because of the emotional experience, you never forget it. So it seems like it is very much important that we recognize the emotional side of learning and make sure that when we go to the class, that we are very excited about what we're talking. They can lead the excitement among students as well, because they're not machine. They actually are very much driven by emotion. And the more we tap into their emotional side, the more likely we can actually make them to retain the knowledge. Now, why in this case, yes?
For me, like I never have met a student who is free from fear of failure. So would you please explain that point?
Yeah, again, which basically, yeah.
Succeed and
Yeah, what do we mean by this? If student does not have a confidence, he or she can actually succeed. That actually will kill even the attempt to succeed. So in a sense that is, what we mean here, this is a detrimental fear, not the normal fear. The normal excitement is actually very useful. If they're excited, they are fearful, they are more likely to pay more attention and study. Wow. But we don't talk about that one. But if they are fearful to the level that's detrimental, means killing to them, they don't even trust themselves to attempt, then we say that's very hard for those students to succeed. So therefore, it's very important that we believe in our students, and we have them to believe in themselves as well in terms of their ability to succeed and to learn whatever the subject that we're teaching.
So it's like self-esteem.
Self-esteem or self-confidence. Self-esteem or self-confidence. Now, the question is why some or most students are not interested in learning. All right? That's one of the key excuses that you will hear from many professors, right? You know, we live in this time and students come, they are like I teach at private university, I teach at Faisal University, and when I moved there, everyone, those are rich boys and girls, they have no interest in learning. I said, I don't care. They have no options. They have no options. I don't care if they pay or don't care what is their connection or WASTA or anything. I have certain principles. They have to play based on the rules that I have it, okay? So, and I learned that it's all up to you as an instructor, actually. And actually, you know, for those who don't know, and I really like these MIT professors that I always share in my workshops, he argues that a bad professor is a criminal. A bad teacher, he says, commit crimes by killing the potential of human being. Because his argument is that every human has enormous potential, that you need to believe in their potential and you need to make sure you do everything to help them to unleash their potential. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean you're going to succeed 100%. And actually, I believe whoever has 100% satisfaction from a large class, this is a very strong indication that there is something wrong going on, okay? Because when it comes to human being, I don't really think you can make everyone happy. Why? Because not everyone is same in the way they learn. The way that you teach might not work for everyone, and therefore not everyone can actually succeed in learning. So in this regard, my actually objective is always, if I reach 80%, I consider a great success. Though I have a PhD in education, I engage in teaching workshops, I will share with you, I hear a lot of praise for some of students, but I never get a teaching award from students based on the survey from students, because if you go to the popularity, the majority, well, there are some students out there, they don't like, or they're not going to be, you're not going to be their favorite one. And I don't care to gain their support now. I want to gain their appreciation once they go into the market. So therefore, it's really, again, 100% is very difficult. But why? They're not interested in learning. So in economics, and there's a guy in mid of 20th century, he came up with a very simple formula. And we use it very common. He says, look, he says that everything that we do is based on expected value. The expected value, whenever we make a choice, he says that we make based on the expected value and we decide accordingly. The expected value of something is the probability of getting that times the actual outcome of that. So in other words, you're going to do some things and you're going to earn 10,000 riyal with 1% probability. You're going to do some things, you're going to earn, let's say, 200 riyal with 99% likelihood. Which one are you going to choose? First one or second one? 10,000 with 1% likelihood. What is 1% of 10,000? 1% of 10,000. 1,000? 100. See? So 1%, you're going to earn 10,000. 95%, you're going to earn 200. Which one are you going to choose? Second one, for sure. So again, what you care is about the expected value. The expected value comes with probability times the promised outcome, okay? So in this regard, we need to same things we do for education. What is the expected value of education for students? What do they expect to gain from your class? If they think that nothings, then don't expect them to really pay any price for nothing. Because in economics, we say that life is like a market, that everything has a price, You pay the price based on the expected value of what you're going to get it. So if you want them to pay attention, which is the price they have to pay their time to learn your subjects, you need to make sure that you convince them they're going to get the reward worthy of their time. So, and that's one of the essential part. In this case, again, it's that expected value. Now, how can we do that? So again, one way is we need to really, whatever the subject we're going to teach. Let's say one of the common complaints we get is that the quantitative subjects, students don't really like. Now, it's very ironic that, who was the guy that invented algebra? Al-Khwarizmi, right? So it's like your father, right? Look, forefathers as Arab, right? But unfortunately, if you ask students now, it's actually an Arab person invented algebra, and they hate algebra. Or they hate calculus. Economics, whenever you include a quantitative, they start to run away from it. Why? That's really weird. Now why, again, it's very clear. Because of the teacher, there is a problem with teaching also. There is a problem with not understanding the actual value as well. Now one of very good book, I suggest anyone who teach any quantitative subjects make necessary for their student to read this book. As a book is actually a recent book that written called The Infinite Powers of Calculus. The book is actually make a compelling argument that without calculus, you wouldn't have anything almost in that what you enjoy in modern life. You could not get it this projector. You could not get it a laptop. You could not get it a car. You could not get an airplane. And it's actually clearly through example shows that how you need to have a calculus to actually invent such very helpful instrument in life. Now when you look at that, you say, oh, okay, that means this is really very, very useful tools for me, or very useful knowledge for me to gain. So again, so it's very important that we show the value of what we're teaching. So now you might say, I teach a subject that really has no value, then I will say, don't teach it, because I believe every subject has a certain value. That's why we have it. It doesn't matter what you teach. I think that you can always make a strong case in terms of the added value of this knowledge to your students. And if you really think it has absolutely no value, I suggest that you go and suggest to those individuals to drop the course from the curriculum. Because if a course has absolutely no value for students, it shouldn't be there. If it has a value, then we should be able to show to the students.